Hey guys, I'm Patrick. I'm one of the commanders for Dagger. So I'm a software developer. I'm kind of engineering lead, and I kind of work in the chemicals commodity trading space with gas, oils, and things like this. But my demo today is actually going to be completely unrelated to things to do with work and more about a like hobby project. But yeah, my background is like usually C# programming, things like that. So yeah, that's me. All right. I'll just kind of like give some background around this whole project, really. So, I've made a couple of projects in the past which are kind of around like a little helper tools for a game or a community that I like, right? So if it's Star Wars, I might kind of make a tool around that. If it's Diablo, maybe I can make a tool around that. If it's another game like Dota, maybe I can make a little tool around that. Generally, it's something that I do when I'm kind of like playing a game with a friend, or I just want to learn something new, and I try and pick something that's kind of related to gaming because it's just kind of a passion I have. And I just thought, well, maybe I could use a bit of Dagger just as I was like developing this application. So it's a Windows-based app, but Avalonia is a cross-platform kind of framework you can use. So if you know C# and you want to build something for a Mac or for Windows, you can use their framework, build it, and you can have a nice looking UI. So I've used Avalonia, kind of like that's what I've picked. And what I'll do now is I'll head over to my little project. It's running in Rider. So Rider has a cool kind of like plugin where you can visually see your Avalonia app as you build it with XAML. But this is kind of like how every Avalonia app kind of starts. Like you'll get a default template, you've got your Avalonia, like whatever it is, like a default hello world. And so this is kind of like your main input. And so with the with a desktop app, right, you're going to have views of some kind. So what I can show you is just kind of like what is it that kind of like I'm building visually, like as an app, as a tool. And so what this tool is, this Dota helper, is a timer-based app. So it's integrating into Dota by using something called game state integration. And there's a little config file that you can basically place into your game installation. And the Dota engine, I think it's the Valve engine, the Valve engine, will send requests basically, right, to this endpoint that you've said, giving you some information about the game. I'm not using too much information from the game that's running. It's only using like basically the time of like what the game time is at that moment. But I might add more things into the future. And so, yeah, this is kind of like one of the main parts of the app, right? Like you're going to have someone who's going to launch the app. They're going to want to maybe make some timers. They might want some timers if they're playing like a healer or a support or a tank. Like kind of depends what their role is in that game, but they might just not be interested in all the kind of timers that you get with the app. So there is that kind of customization where they can create profiles. And so, yeah, this is all built with XAML and C#. So let's go to the timers view. I guess this one's kind of important. So the timers view is actually the one that's kind of the most used. This is like an overlay. The overlay is like a little transparent window that pops up, and it will show the user, including like audio clues, of when something's about to occur within the game, so that they can go, okay, I need to go and do this like little objective, right? I forgot how to do this thing. I need to go and stack this camp. I need to go and probably go and gank top lane. Oh, the boss is up, right? Any kind of timer. This will kind of like help them a little bit. So I wouldn't say that this is for like advanced users. This is really a training tool because it's quite an overwhelming game. Dota is very complicated. So it's just a tool there to kind of help. So yeah, this is kind of all the main screens. There's not that many screens, right? You've got the settings, you've got the profiles tab, the timers tab where they can add in timers or default timers. There's an integration tab where they can essentially just make sure that all the configuration is running, like, hey, the game is installed, hey, it's the config is right there, hey, I'm listening for events to be sent to the app, right? Because the game will be running, it's in and like basically start sending like these interval messages to the client, which is like a little mini web server basically that runs in this app. And so that's how I can kind of keep these timers calculated, right? So there's some C# that I've got here. And basically every second, this is like going to be getting some new information and calculate some stuff like what timer should be visible. Should the timer now be hidden because you don't want all the timers always running all the time? So there's some maths in here and some stuff to do with times and the seconds and making sure that it doesn't show everything or too little. And yeah, so that's like the main app part, right? What I can show also is just the config file, just to kind of give you a concept like how does that thing work. So this is the little file that gets put into the game, like game state integration folder, and it's just basically telling the game engine, hey, send your information to this local address, and I'm only interested in map data. Like I don't care about any information about the players or what abilities they're using or any items. I just care about the time, basically. That's really the most important part for the timers. And so yeah, that's kind of the main piece, right? So kind of show you just if I run the app locally. This is the little splash screen that I've got that kind of comes up, and we'll click this and it just kind of starts it. You'll see in the top left corner, it's very faint, but that's a little overlay, and that can go on top of the game. And the idea is that as the game is running, different timers will appear. Now they're not appearing right now because it's -1 minute when the game starts, but if I was to just add another profile quickly, let's just add some kind of fake timers in, right? Just enable these instantly. What you'll see is just that's kind of like how the timers appear for the user. And they can give the timers a custom name, like, oh, this is for this bounty rune, oh, this is for something else over here. And as long as they know when that event occurs for that specific timer, they can configure the time of when that should fire. They can configure if they want an audio file to play for that timer. And yeah, that's kind of the main part of the game, right? The main part of the app. So the reason the time's working now, I'm not actually running Dota. I don't have it open, but it's really nice to be able to configure the timers to make sure that they do what they should. So I have this kind of like demo timer, game timer, and auto. So if the app detects the game's running, it will swap and make sure that it's actually using the real time of like the game. But just whilst the game's not running, you're just running the config, you just got the app open, you want to test everything that's showing correctly. It basically just fakes the time, right? So it just kind of creates a fake time. And so that's the app. And I was thinking, well, like none of this is really like Linux or containers or Docker. Like you're running a Windows app. Why is Patrick using Dagger at all for this? There's a few little pieces, and I think I'll move on to that piece now. So yeah, let's show you the Dagger stuff that I've got. So let me move over to my Golang IDE. So it's in the same repo as all the source code of the C# stuff. It's just as a separate ID, just so I get the IntelliSense. And here is my my module. It's a private module. It's not to be used for anything else. It's just for like my mini project here. And the app is cross-platform in some ways. I haven't built it to be like tested on a Mac, but I'm sure I could make sure like kind of improve it and make sure that it could run on a Mac. But it's really just using .NET SDKs under the hood. And .NET SDKs, there's base images for that, right? So I've managed to pull down the Microsoft's .NET SDK version 8, which is the current LTS version. And there's a couple of NuGet packages and some tooling that I use as I build and bundle the app. So I kind of also am able to install those too. So even though it's a Windows kind of like main thing that I'm building, I can still actually use Dagger to make sure that my app is like using like the correct SDK. I can run it in a CI pipeline without needing a Windows agent. I don't need any of that stuff, right? I can just have, hey, look, it's going to run on a simple Ubuntu machine on a GitHub action. And so, yeah, this is kind of like me building out my main, like just my environment with two tools which I kind of use, which help me with some specific information that isn't part of my build time that I want in my pipeline. So I can give two examples why the Dagger piece with the building is cool and nice, but also why did Patrick also need Dagger? Well, there's this NuGet license feature, which I thought is really nice to have in a pipeline, and also this Git version tool. So the two pieces that they link to, if I launch the app back up, you'll notice I get a little version here, like version 1.41. That's one piece which I use just with tagging, like when I do a GitHub release. And the other piece is there was that other tool which I showed, which was like Git license versions. When my app is building, I get some NuGet packages. So like any shared packages I have, they get restored. And I have that .NET tool scans the NuGet packages that are in my app, and it creates a JSON file. And that JSON file I'm passing to make sure that any like third-party packages I've used in my project, I basically just have them listed in the app. So rather than me having to run that tool manually every time I do a build or I add a new package in or I push stuff up, oh, that JSON file is like not being automatically handled. So to make sure I don't miss that step, when I push my code out, I want to make sure it runs some .NET tool specifically with that like build and release process. So it can always create the most like freshest JSON file with those packages. And so, yeah, this is a nice way for me to make sure that, I'm linking every project and that like the license that's with them in the app. And so I'm not using too many things. One is for audio. There's like a cross-platform like audio library used just to like run the WAV files or the MP3 files that users configure. And another one is for reading like Valve domain-specific key value files. So this file doesn't really look like a JSON file. It's a Valve-specific file. And so just to make sure that they're contributed properly in the app, I just made sure that that's kind of included, right? So yeah, that's why I install these two tools. So that's the main piece. Really, it's like, okay, let me just get my my main image. And so when I want to make sure that my licenses, like that JSON file is actually correctly configured, I have this get packages file, which is a separate function, which is actually using that tool I've just installed, right? So this is, again, a separate function. I just want, what's nice about Dagger is I can have all these little pieces, all these mini tasks that I know I need as separate functions. And then I can just compose them later on into the main function that I'll use in like a pipeline, like a publish or whatever it is. So in this piece here, what I'm doing is I'm adding in my Git repo, doing a .NET restore to make sure all the packages are restored, and then running that tool. And that outputs a package.json file for me, so I know it's the latest one. And I just kind of grab that file back, and I can place that into my actual distribution later on. So that's one piece here, which is pretty useful. And then the version, so that's using Git version, where I basically can grab the right version information so that I got that for my release zipped file name when I do a GitHub release. So that's another piece, which is what I'm using. Now, what's another main piece here? So my .NET publish. So yeah, what I'm doing here is I'm getting that container. I'm adding my code in. I need to close this because it's actually bringing up audio. Yeah, so I add my repo in. I make sure I mount that packages, which I was talking about, into this build stage. I .NET publish. This is the name of the repo, that the project that it should be building, because I've added the code in, right? It's targeting for Windows 64, just at least for this specific like support that I have. I don't have a Mac to really test on. Then I've got this self-contained, so I just kind of like want everything to be bundled, if it can, into one thing. And so that's the last piece, right? That's my publish. So what's nice is I can run this, and I know if it's actually going to be doing everything I need locally without having to run it in a separate place. I can just do this locally. And then I've got a publish zip. This is using, I think, Mark, one of the other commanders. He wrote two modules, which I pulled in because they were actually really useful. And one is zipping things up, and the other is actually doing the GitHub release, right? So these two other functions, which I kind of like make use of, I get my .NET published output, and then make sure that I'm just getting the published folder, right? That's all like the DLLs and everything that come with the app. I zip them up using that shared module, and just give it like the naming convention that I kind of want, right? This is kind of like how it should be. This is the version. It's Windows, AMD 64. Zip it up, and then that's also my kind of publisher's zip done. So now I can run that locally, and every time I run that, I know I don't have to like wait and run that in a CI pipeline with some custom stuff. I can just run this locally, make sure I get the zip, even unzip it locally, test it, which is really nice. And then I've got my main piece here, which is the release. So this is really the only function that's, I guess, the most important out of everything, because this is the one that just does the whole thing. So yeah, I'm using my zip function, which was kind of written above, right? I've got this publisher zip. That means I get my zipped app. I get some version information using git version, just so I can actually do the release naming in the GitHub release properly. And then that's it. That's the main piece there. I then use that shared module which I've installed. I pass in my options, do a release, do a create, pass in that information, and then that's my release done. So this is actually really nice. So the way that this runs, at least for me, is really simple with two kind of workflow files I've got. One is, so this is the way that I've set it up. I don't know if this is necessarily perfect or like the best way, but I've set it up so that when I tag something, even from my local machine, like git tag version like 104, right? If I push that, that's when I want it to do the release. I don't want it to like click a button on GitHub or do anything else. So I've basically just said like when you get a tag that's pushed, that's when you should be running that command that says, yeah, do the release, basically. So it will call that release function. I pass in my token, and then that release will then send the actual release to GitHub, right? So when I run that, I get my nice output in here, which is under releases. And you can see like this is currently the one that I've got. So 141, but yeah, that's how I get the naming of my releases here. Nice. So that's pretty nice. Is that all making sense so far, guys?
Yeah, no, it is actually. I was actually just looking at how short that YAML file is, but how much it was doing. It was,
yeah, well, I mean, this one's
it was 31 lines or something.
Yeah, so my release is really simple. Like that's the only YAML I really needed for my release, right? Everything else was just all those other functions that I can run locally. Yeah, and my build, yeah, it's not really just, it's doing pretty much the same as a release, just without publishing it. So I still like to like run any tests to actually make sure the build is working. Again, really simple, really simple YAML. I just didn't have to write that much, and I don't want to, right. And that's why I really like this. This stuff. There's another thing that I've actually got that I didn't actually include in like the main pipeline. So I have some functions that I only use locally, and I just thought that's probably quite important to share. Like you don't have to have only functions that you would just run on like a CI platform. Right. So I've got a use case here which could be pretty good to show. Now the app comes with some bundled audio, like specific audio files for these specific objectives that can happen, like when a power rune spawns or a tier 5 tier neutral. There's these specific objectives. And it was kind of really annoying to like go, oh, like where do I get these audio files from? What app online can I use? Oh, are they expensive? Which one? Blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to regenerate these all the time, but I wanted a way to like just quickly go, there's this new objective. I'm going to add it in, and oh god, what was that thing I did when I needed that MP3 file created, and then go doing it manually? I didn't want to do any like mini manual tasks. So what I wanted to do is try and find any task at all that I could automate if I needed to do it again, despite it not having to be part of my release pipeline. Get it in a Dagger function. So this actually happened. I missed out a couple of objectives just because I don't know the game that much. And it was actually useful. I went, oh, actually, I could add in the tiers really simple. And so I've got a Dagger function, which, if I go to it, it's in here. I think it's just called like create TTS. I mean, I've got it listed here, right? If I do my Dagger functions here, you'll see there's this create audio assets. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, in here, I've got a simple function where I pass in my Open API key. So I basically decided to use OpenAI because they have a really simple TTS service to use, and the audio sounds really nice. Like you can try like Google Audio and these other ones, but this one was so nice. And so yeah, I listed out all of the audio files that I actually need. I could probably make this smarter so that it doesn't regenerate things based on what I already have. But I haven't done that. I'm a bit lazy. So that's probably something I'm probably going to add in once I've done with my demo. But yeah, I basically list out all the things I want. I create a container that gets curl because I'm just using really raw way of the OpenAI requests. Basically, I don't need a Python SDK, I just need something really simple. I pass in my key. I tell it a directory that I kind of like want the audio created in. That's a really simple template where the model name is TTS1HD. So it's like really nice, crisp like audio. The voice, and then I just loop through my assets and basically send off a request saying, hey, I want an audio file that says this. I want an audio file that says this. And so it creates all the files that I want. I get a build, I sync it because I don't really want the container. I don't need the container or anything else. So I just kind of like force the evaluation of the engine right here within that function, and then just return the directory of the audio files. So that's something that I only run locally, so that if I know I need to add something into my actual project, into the assets, into the audio file, I can just kind of do that whenever I want, and I don't have to go like finding something, right? So that was a really nice, I think a nice piece is finding something that is like really annoying or just is an asset that you can regenerate and just run those functions locally, right? You don't need to only think about something about a pipeline that's like for deploying or releasing. Like you can do these little things too. And so yeah, that's I think that's everything covered. So yeah, I've kind of like covered the function I've created. I've shown the publish, it's pretty simple to do. Yeah, that's 2 simple workflow files for me. Really not that complicated at all. Really easy to do. And then yeah, I just kind of, you can download the app. It's a zip file. You unzip it. When you unzip it, that's kind of the app you get, right? You get that startup, and that's it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'd love to see it in the .NET SDK someday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking if there were some things that I could have done maybe a bit better if I was just using C# for like the Dagger stuff. But to be honest with you, once you know the way that the Dagger SDK works, it doesn't really matter what the language is. Like like you're a bit more comfortable. But I do have a case where I did a bit of Go code in another project that it was just a function, and like there is some really nice things where I go, oh, I wish I could write that in C#, but it wasn't like essential. Like if you just want to like really like your main concerns are pipelines and things like that, honestly it was so nice to just get away from C#. That was like my main language for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And so when I started looking into Dagger and going, oh, actually, like Go's not that complicated. Oh, back to pointers. Here we go. Oh, actually, it's not actually that complicated either. Really nice to use. So yeah, I kind of like mixing things now. So I kind of do a bit of C#, trying to learn Go. I get by with what I've got here, and it's been really nice. The project is working great, and every time I do a Git tag, Dagger's there with me, right? It's helping me push out my releases to GitHub smooth, or these little mini tasks, and it's pretty fast as well when I do the builds. Yeah, so I think that's it. I mean, I can show you the app one more time, just so you guys can see kind of like what happens.
Yeah, this is really cool. And I want to make sure we have enough time for the other demos too.
Yep.
But at the same time, I'm so excited I just want to say thank you for volunteering to come on today, but also showing this, because I think sometimes we get lost in like trying to show these larger pipelines and how those can get changed with Dagger. But like the fact that Dagger can be used every day for, work things, but then also for things like this, your hobby of just making life simpler.
Yeah.
It shows everyone kind of a simpler way to start thinking about like, how can you use functions for everyday purposes for anything, and just Daggers, I think you just said it earlier, like Dagger's just right with you all the time, and that's what we're aiming to do is make life simpler for any use case that a function would make sense for. And in most cases, a function anything can really be a function. So that's it's really cool to see examples like this. So thank you for showing it.
Yeah, let's go in for Deadlock now.
Right.
Oh yeah. That's another one on my list. I'll see what I can do.
And
Perfect, thank you.
Patrick, if anyone wants to look at your code for inspiration or the functions, is there a link that would be best to kind of share with people on the chat?
Yeah, I can paste this in the chat.
Perfect.
I think I need to join chat here and connect up. But yeah, I can paste that
No
for you
worries.
guys.
Okay, yeah, no, and I can grab this too. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. I didn't check if it was a private repo before. But
Yep.
awesome. Great. Yeah, thank you so much for showing this.
Thanks, guys.